It was today announced that Fifflaren has left NIP or been kicked from NIP or just in some sense departed from NIP. It's pretty much irrelevant which one of those, which options it actually is. And so I actually already had planned this exact topic, what NIP should do in terms of their roster, as soon as I saw them eliminated from ESWC. Because to me, not only the fact that they were eliminated so early, but the way they got eliminated, getting smashed by Titan, losing a game to an opponent they never should have been able to lose to. That French Platinum team is not a team that the NIP I remember would have ever been able to lose to. So this really was the point where actually they'd hit enough of a rock bottom of bad results with only the ESL result in the middle that it actually was worth replacing someone, definitely to me at this point in time. Like, the gamble of waiting till DreamHack Winter would have been too much of a gamble. Like, in the past, when you still had the results, you were always making semis or finals. The gamble was, okay, we know we can still win, we're just not. So we don't want to gamble giving away the high level of success we're having now, for the possibility of having an even better team, but also maybe having a worse team. Now, that other side doesn't almost exist. What could NIP do that's worse than this? Go out in group stage? They've done that a whole bunch of times now. Could they not make it to semis and finals? They're not doing that anyway. They've only done it once in the last 6 events. This is a team that there really is no gamble anymore. Now the gamble is the all upside. Like, let's get a new player and let's see if we can make a new magical lineup. Let's see if we can do what Fnatic did and have an awesome new lineup that kicks ass. Probably not that good, but we can do something to turn it around. And then we have at least a chance of winning DreamHack Winter, because that's the key point. At this point in time, NIP had essentially no chance. Like, with all the good teams out there, yeah, obviously it's possible they could have won, but if you're being realistic, I'd have put the number on NIP winning DreamHack Winter probably at like maybe even below 10% at this point in time. The way they were playing, it might be like 5%, so like 1 in 20 chance of winning the tournament. So to me, it's definitely worth trying someone. But here's an interesting point. When I'd planned this video a little while ago, oh, by the way, I'll just reference this actually. I won't talk that much about the slump that NIP had and the problems they had recently, because I actually just did an article that I published. I'll put it in the description box down here. That's all about the slump, the last 4 months and the last 6 events they attended and the problems they had and why contextually it was different from even other periods in time when they didn't win many events or when they started to lose, why it was very different. So check that out. This is kind of a companion piece building off of that. So I'm going to talk in this article actually about who they could replace Fifflaren with, who they could put into his spot. But I just want to make this point first, that actually, when I was going to make my video, I actually was going to go further than most people. It wasn't just going to be a minus Fifflaren video, though I would have definitely said Fifflaren was the first person I would remove. But here's the key thing. I was actually going to say, I think that NIP should have removed 2 people. Like, I don't think their problems were endemic just to Fifflaren. He was the biggest problem, because once other players weren't living up to their level and weren't able to be as effective, then him not contributing enough kills and having 2 better performers was the main thing pulling them down. But crucially, taking him away, you still have the other problems that the others had. So personally, I thought that 2 players should have been removed. Now, I'm open to who the second one should be, but personally, and this might sound shocking, I would have picked Xizt as the person I'm using. Here's my rationale, okay? I'll start with the other players. You can't remove Get Right, because, okay, he has been playing way below his level. He's not the best player in the world at the moment. He still has the potential to be. That's a key point as to why you can't remove him. He definitely can be still. The team clearly it doesn't work the same way around him. That's a problem. It feels like he's trying to change things up a bit, or he's trying to carry in ways that it was effortless to him before. Secondly, he really is the player where if you let him go and another team gets him and they destroy you completely, that could just end everything. That could just break you. So you can't remove Get Right. Forrest, okay, listen, I'm actually someone where I'm willing to listen to that conversation. Again, he has a very high potential, very high skill level, but actually, Forrest hasn't been that impressive for a long while to me. In all of 2014, I've found him a bit lackluster. He's been more inconsistent than ever. He sometimes hasn't had to be that great. He hasn't had to be one of the top 3 players in the world. People used to rank him. I don't think he's been up there for a while. For me, he's been sort of 5th or 6th best player for all of 2014 going downhill. And to me now, he's like at the bottom end of the top 10, maybe not even a top 10 player in the world at this point in time. So I'm willing to listen to that. But with that said, if I replace Forrest, I'd need someone who can play his sort of role with his sort of impact. And that's where it kind of gets difficult, because there are players you could put in there, but I'm not sure, because a lot of them haven't played in teams recently, they're not on top teams. I don't really think there's people in position where they're going to outperform what Forrest is doing now. So again, those 2 really aren't on the table if you're being realistic. Then we get to the other 2, Xizt and Friberg. Now the thing with Friberg is, He's had a bit of a slump, but I actually think of all the players in this 5-man team, he's been doing the best in my opinion. Like actually this year has been the year where I actually got most impressed by Friberg because he's the guy I think who saved Nip's asses in a bunch of best of threes, a bunch of maps, turned a bunch of games around, turned around rivalries like versus Virtus Pro and Na'Vi because he was the guy where Nip always had baller ass CT sides. Whenever their players were on form, they would have solid CT sides on all the maps and they were still strong. Their big problem was on T sides, you could see where other teams had gone way beyond them in terms of tactics. Like Very Games, well, Titan, obviously were way ahead of them. The newer Fnatic side had a much better approach for this meta, and LDLC, these other teams, the old LDLC I'm talking about, the Happy-led one, these teams were way better tactically. So Nip kind of was just getting by on like their chemistry and the way they play off each other within the game, this intuitive team play style. They didn't really have great executes anymore, so a lot of games really were turned by 1 or 2 rounds where Friberg, they couldn't get an entry, they were struggling to get around, maybe to get over the hump to 16 or to get back in a game, and he would get that key entry on Inferno at B, or he would break open the game on Dust 2 at Catwalk. And this really was what I think kept them at that level actually when some of the other players were having problems. So I wouldn't remove Friberg. Now Xizt, I think his level's been gradually dropping a bit like Forrest's actually. Over the last year, the last 6 months, the last 9 months, I've seen his level drop. He's not really that clutch. He's not really winning the 1v2s and 1v1s people used to think of him as before. He's clearly not that big an impact in terms of tactically. Like actually, he's one of the people where his stock really dropped for me when they changed Fifflaren to the in-game leader. Because I actually thought their team was a bit more structured then. I actually felt like it didn't really make that much of a difference. Yet think of any other great in-game leader, Existence, these sorts of guys. You take these guys out of the in-game leading role, their team's just going to fall apart completely. They're going to be definitely worse, and they won't have the same top peak level, whereas actually Nip did in a way. So to me, of all the other players, that's the other one I would have removed. So I would be adding 2 players in. But for this particular sake, we're just going to talk about the Fifflaren one since that's what's actually happened, and now it's unlikely they'll remove a second player. So there are all these different Swedish players we could put in there, but before we address the ones that I think could be in or why they will or won't, I'll say this. It's not Nip's fault, but they missed out here. Remember when everyone used to say that you shouldn't remove Fifflaren? They'd always use this example. Pro players even have said this. Okay, so let's say you remove Fifflaren and you put in Olof M. It would always be Olof M. If it wasn't Olof M, they'd say Dennis or they'd say Delpan. These were the 3 names people always brought up. Now here's the problem. Olof M plays for Fnatic now. Now here's what's crazy. I would have had him in the mix here in this article before ESWC. Because even though Fnatic won Face It, they had some maps there where it was shaky. Up until that point, they'd had all this potential and they'd bombed semi-finals of DreamHack Stockholm. They could have won ESL 1 Cologne, but they didn't manage to. Nip held it out on them. They actually still seemed to have a level they needed to go to become the best team. They become potentially world champions, the best team in the world that they actually are now. That's the problem. This last ESWC event said to me that they got over that hump. It wasn't a fluke at Face It. That wasn't just a good day. They are the best team now. They look like they can consistently be the best team. To me, they're going to be the favourite for every one of the next 3 or 4 events coming up. And so that's the problem. Within their old team, where they were having some slight performance problems, at least relative to the potential being the best team, the thing was, of all the players in the team, the most obvious one who was the odd man out was Olof M. Crims came into the team and he used to be a support player. He's playing supportive roles, but now he's dominating in Fnatic from them. He's the best player in the whole team. JW's just doing whatever he wants and it's working a lot of the time. Flash is so solid. Pronox is a core member of the team. The only guy who didn't really have a really good role that was effective and you knew what you were going to get from him was Olof M. So even though he's friends with Crims and maybe he likes it in Fnatic now, I could have seen it that if they'd come to him 2 events ago, or if Fnatic had, say, gone out in the semi-finals at ESWC and then they don't do well at DreamHack Winter, to me, Olof M's the guy where even though he's in Fnatic and they're doing well, he might have considered an option to move over, especially if they get rid of 2 players in Nip and he's freeing up a star role potentially. I think he might have actually gone for it. I think that would have really been on the table, believe it or not. So I think that would have been a good pickup as well. And the problem is that's a player that actually has been playing recently. Obviously, at a top-level team, you know what you're going to get roughly. He's off the table now because it's very unlikely he's going to leave Fnatic. He's definitely not going to leave before DreamHack Winter, you'd think, when they can win the whole 100,000 and they've got the best team. So I think that's probably scuppered it for Nip in terms of that. They've waited a year and now that option that would have always been there every time because you're Nip and you have all this money and all these great players and Get Right and Forest, every single one of those has gone down a bit. So I don't think Olof M's an option now. no one else on Fnatic obviously is an option either, so it isn't an option to get JW. They're all pipe dreams if you think that. So now we're looking at players who realistically are sort of free agents or they're in lesser teams. Now that alone is going to be a problem for all these guys, because some of them, even the ones who have been playing, they haven't been playing much. They've barely been to any lands. Most of them none since like a few months back. Some of them haven't been alive for like 6 months, like a significant one, and they definitely haven't been playing top-level competition in top teams. They've been playing in bad teams where nothing's expected from them. So I'm going to start at the top. This is the main person where if Thorin was the GM and I had control and I could even say to players, listen, don't worry that you've got problems with this guy, he'll be good for the team. I would recruit this guy, Makalele, formerly known as Exum. He was in LGB. Now, here's the key thing. He wasn't in the LGB you're probably thinking of, like the one that went to the semi-finals at EMS 1 Katowice, or the one that went to, had another game against Virtus Pro at the Copenhagen Games. He wasn't in that LGB, but people always mention that, okay? They say it as if, like, oh, so he wasn't actually good. Like, you're thinking of good LGB and, like, he was good. No, LGB was good at the end of 2013. People always forget that part of LGB. The one where they got to the round of 8 of DreamHack Winter and they took a map off NiP and they actually played NiP very close. They almost beat NiP in that first major. Then, right after that, a tournament not many people saw, the SVI Cup, the Swedish Cup, the Swedish Championship at the end of the year. That tournament there, they took a map off NiP again. They played NiP very close over a 3-map series. He was one of the best players in that team. For me, the best players in LGB during his era was, in this order, Olof M, Exum, then Dennis. Now, here's the key thing. So I would say Exum, because if you bring him in, he can bring you a lot of firepower right away. He can do some AWPing, so you can do that as well if you want that in this new era of VIP. To me, this is the best candidate of them all in terms of what I think I'm fairly sure he could bring in the server. Now, the problem apparently with Exum Makalele now is that people always cite it that maybe he has some sort of attitude problems or he has some sort of... he wouldn't fit in socially in NiP. Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe that's probably the reason why they wouldn't do that. I could buy that. Okay, so let's go down the list. The next name I'd put in there is Schneider. Okay, a lot of people want Schneider to be in this team, actually. Here's the thing with Schneider. This will sound strange, but I actually thought that Schneider was the second best player in Fnatic. But in a weird way, okay, like this. Flusher was actually the best because he's the only one who had consistency. JW was all over the place and could never really be a full-on star. Schneider also was wildly inconsistent, but the difference with Schneider was he actually had a couple of runs where he was solid. Like at the end of 2013, he was one of their best players for sure. He was quite solid. Then I remember it was sort of, I think it was around like March of this year when he had quite a nice little stretch of being the best player in Fnatic. The problem with Schneider was his aim was always a little bit of fool's gold, I thought. He reminds me of Nothing, where if you watch Nothing when he has a really good game, you'll be like, oh, his aim can be so awesome. Imagine if he was that good all the time. Yeah, that's the problem. He isn't. And he's not going to do that all the time. And even if his aim's awesome and he's flashy, he's not going to deliver that all the time. He's going to get some kills and they'll be really flashy and look awesome, but they won't be consistently great. He's not going to be a big fragger for you. So that's the problem with Schneider. And then you have to add in, why was he kicked from Fnatic? Now, they've never publicly said, they've sort of hinted at this, but it was made fairly implicit within their hints and the way they've talked around the subject, that it was something to do with motivation, and that out of everyone in the team, he was the obvious one that like wasn't bought into like full-on practice or boot camping or whatever. So that's a problem if you want to bring him into the best team of all time and potentially wanting to be the best team again. If they're losing and they're doing badly now, is he going to be fully into that? Now, you can listen, he can say he is and all the rest of it, but I don't know. I'd have the question mark there. So it's not like he was a monster anyway. I think Makalele's a much better player. I don't know. To me, there's some question marks there, but okay, I'll have him up on my list. The third name on my list is Moddii. Now, don't laugh. Hey, I'm not joking here. I'm actually being serious. It's Moddii. Now, you know I just talked about one of them. Schneider maybe has motivation issues, and Makalele, people say maybe he has attitude problems. Based on what we've seen in CSGO history, seems pretty certain that Moddii must have some kind of attitude problems. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not as judgmental as some people. I don't think that means he like can't be used in a team or he's beyond like, oh, if you've got attitude problems, you can't play with that. You have to all be best friends. That's all a bunch of shit. You could definitely make Moddii work in the team. That's why he's third on my list. Moddii's skill level, of everyone on this list, he isn't the best player. Exum's probably the best player. Twist's up there. Pythe's at his time. He could be the best player on this whole list. In 1.6, this guy really should have been one of the greatest players of all time, but he couldn't get into those top teams because it wasn't until they really needed someone and their options had gone that they were willing to go with him because he had these attitude problems. So if it was up to me, yeah, he'd be a real consideration for me. And I know the social issues, but listen, fuck social issues. At the moment, you're bombing out to like platinum and shit at ESWC. Beggars can't be choosers, mate. You can't be going on. He has to be really skilled, probably be an AWPer, maybe have good tactics, and also could he please be perfectly socially set into us and keyed into all of us, a really nice guy. Like, oh really? Should he be 6 foot tall, dark hair, like beautiful emerald green eyes that are striking? Like, come on, man, you have to just pick players that are working the fucking team. So I would pick Moddii. I think he's an awesome player. I think he can be awesome. I think if he got to play with Get Right and Forest, that would definitely box some of his ideas up. And I think it would be one of those, like, to give an NBA analogy, it'd be like a Dennis Rodman scenario where, okay, he was a trouble everywhere else, even though he had the skills. But if you put him with Michael Jordan, I think that'd make him get his shit together, because he knows, listen, I can't fucking let Michael Jordan down. If he thinks I'm good and he's going to give me some role in the team, then that'll bring me in line. Okay, I feel appreciated then. So I'd have Moddii there. Now then, let's go down. I think the next name actually should be Twist. Now, I think that Get Right actually said, perhaps in my Reflections interview with him, that Twist's a player that he would like to play with if he was on an all-star team or something. Now, Twist was in the LGB, the good LGB that you guys love, that wasn't Exum and wasn't Queeton. But okay, he was in the good LGB. And yeah, to me, him and Dennis were like after Exum. And yeah, that's the thing. I actually would have him in the conversation. Like, yeah, I think it is possible to put him in the team. The big problem with Twist is, I just feel like it doesn't make sense to me, his career, really. Like, I have seen good performances, I've seen skill potential shown, but there's something about the fact that he's bounced around a bunch of these teams, or the fact that no one does seem to, like, actively recruit him and try to get him into one of these top teams. Why was he never considered for Fnatic before? If they were in a slump and they would need new players, why didn't NiP never even put him on the table or bring it in? Like, yeah, there's something about that doesn't quite add up to me yet, so I'm kind of a bit off there. Similarly, let's bring Dennis into the equation here. I actually think Dennis shouldn't probably be on this list, because as far as I know, he actually quit when LGB was potentially going to get a big sponsorship and become a big team, because he wanted to do work or he just didn't want to play anymore. He's played a little bit, but that actually suggests that he definitely does have some kind of motivation issue, or he's not willing to commit to go all in on CS, so that's a problem. The upside of Dennis is, even though I think his skills have been blown out of proportion, but I think people used to go way overboard, call him the best in LGB. He was good. The problem with Dennis is, the upside of Dennis, rather, is that he can actually do some in-game leading. I think actually with NiP's loose style, if I'm thinking how LGB used to work, I think it'd be a pretty good addition, especially if you had have done what I'd said and removed 2 players, you bring 2 players in, bring in Dennis and Exum. Hey, now we've got a team that we can start doing something with. We don't need Forrest to be a star. With that said, yeah, like I say, the inactivity is what would kill it for me. If we go down the list some more, then we get to Pyth. People always mention this guy, but this guy clearly has some issues. Like, this guy can't even stay in a team for like 3 weeks, it feels like. And he's the guy who always gets added to a lineup and people get hyped, and he's like gone within 2 weeks. Like, that suggests to me we're getting along a worse and worse scale of some of the attitude problems or motivation issues, or just something's a bit off with these guys. Like, that's the problem with him. And also, I feel like he gets a lot too much credit for online performances, to be honest. I don't think he's that much of a monster. Similarly, but even though he's at the bottom of my list, I'll just reference this guy now because it's a similar thing. I actually think that Sipe, who also was like an LGB guy, and Lemon Dogs, I think, before that, I think he actually gets really overrated, because he's a guy to me where he would just shit on the bad teams and the medium teams, but when he was in the big game, actually, I think he kind of shrunk a bit. Like, if he'd have been up to the level people would talk about, especially some of the names on this list, I think he already would have been like established as a really solid player. Whereas I think actually he's got some levels to go, or he's got some impediment that's not allowing him to become a player that I would consider. Delpan always used to be the name people mention, because if you want a dedicated AWPer, okay, but this guy actually, I don't usually like to use the word potential, but I think actually in a good team, Delpan does have the potential, because here's the thing, the skills aren't quite there yet in CSGO, but he has the AWPer mentality. He has the Kenny S mentality where he'll just buy the AWP every single time. And he won't do what a Guardian sometimes does and just give it up and just go to the rifle and place it. He'll go every single time if that's what you want, and he'll take that shot every time, and he'll be aggressive, and he'll peek a CT on Dust 2. He'll actually do that. Now, his skills have a little bit to go, so actually, I don't think he's that hot a commodity that you have to get Delpan. Like, you've seen no other teams had to. They've all done fine. I also think it's a bit overblown, this concept that you have to have some dedicated monster AWPer. To me, actually, in CSGO at the moment, there's only 2 or 3 really dedicated AWPers like that. There's a lot of people just using it in between, especially because of the power of the CZ. Maybe something I'll address in a future video. One last name on the list for me is Queeton. Now, actually, Queeton was the least impressive of LGB. even the I obviously wasn't in the era that had like the Crims LFM era that you guys are thinking of, but he wasn't that impressive. He was okay in this recent SK team. I would have brought him in only if we had been putting 2 players in. So say we wanted to bring in a staff for some firepower and a supportive player to do some bit trolls. That's what I would have done. I'd have brought Exum and Wheaton. They've got some synergy. Or I'd have brought in Dennis and Wheaton. Or I brought in Twist and Wheaton. That's probably the way I would have gone with it. So that's my list overall. I've just kind of gone with who I think they should put in the team. Who's the most likely? If I had to guess, I'd say the most likely is in this order. I'd probably say, I think maybe Twist, just because of the thing I mentioned about Get Right liking him before, and then maybe Schneider second, and then third, maybe Dennis. I don't know why you'd bring a guy out of retirement myself, but okay, I think that's how Nip might think about it. Unless some crazy offer comes out of nowhere and they get like all offers. Who can predict that? That to me, that would be stupid if Fnatic let it happen, but okay, we'll put it out there. So, that's the video. Who do you think Fifflaren's replacement should be?